And we are back for the Thousand Worlds Book Club, and we're talking about A Beast for Norn. I am joined by the Waif. Hello, everyone. A Beast for Norn is the 5th story in Tuf Voyaging, but it's actually the first Tuf story written by George R.R. Martin. It was written in 1976, 9 years before the Plague Star in the Suthlum trilogy, and as such, Tuf is a very different character. What is particularly fascinating is we actually have 2 different versions of the story. The audio link below is the 1976 version of A Beast for Norn, but George R.R. Martin actually revised the story for the 1985 release of Tuf Voyaging, which is the written version linked below. And the revision is not insignificant. The character of Tuf has been greatly repaired. He is significantly more moral and intellectual in Beast 85 than he is in Beast 76. In fact, it's kind of an interesting experience to listen to Beast 76 while reading Beast 85. You really get inside the head of the author. So A Beast for Norn opens with Tuf drinking alone on Tamber, which is a poor agricultural world near the richer world of Lauronica. Lauronica is only richer because it receives supplementary income from tourism related to its fighting pits. Beast 76 has Tuf relaxing there and describes Tuf as having calloused hands. Of course, calloused hands means Tuf is a man who does manual labor, and relaxing means that Tuf was probably there by chance. Beast 85 removes these words, meaning Tuf 85 is more of a gentleman, and his presence on Tamber is perhaps intentional. So the titular Norn enters the pub and approaches Tuf about buying a monster. Interestingly, in Beast 76, our author is quite explicit about Tuf's cat Dax telepathically letting him know about Norn's emotions and intentions. Beast 85 has changed this communication to be more subtle, with purrs and hisses replacing the overt communication. Of course, back in Guardians, we learn that Tuf's cats have genetically enhanced telepathic abilities. Specifically, the cats he clones after getting the Ark, Chaos and Dax, not his first cats, Mushroom and Havoc. And I will say Beast 76 really shows how powerful his cats are, and this sheds some light on his earlier adventures. If you recall, back in the Plague Star, Tuf is actually a pretty crappy merchant. Then all of a sudden he becomes a master bargainer. His cats are the reason. His cats also explain why he was able to outplay Rika Dawnstar, and why Tuf comes to trust Tali Moon and Kafira K so quickly. Interestingly, Tuf's big mistake in life was trusting Rika Dawnstar and Kaj Nevis, something he did before the creation of Chaos and Dax. Essentially, Tuf's cats show that he's cheating in his negotiations, just as Bloodraven and whoever else can enter dreams are cheating at the Game of Thrones. Anyway, Norn and Tuf discuss the Federal Empire's Ecological Engineering Corps a bit. Interestingly, in Beast 76, the EEC uses Eco-War as a weapon, but this is changed to Bio-War in Beast 85. There's quite a few of these little corrections made between the versions. For example, the Ark goes from having 1,000 varieties of species for Norn to 10,000 varieties of species for Norn. Or the Ark had a specimen that went extinct 200 years ago, which is changed to 1,200 years ago. The 76 story mentions that the Findi colonized a world a millennium before humans, which is changed to several millennia in 85. Old Earth goes from being opened to being closed off, and the Prometheans go from being incapable of doing something to being capable but secretive about it. Our author quite clearly knows his universe by Beast 85 and corrects his past errors made in 76. Now the Tuf of Beast 85 is clearly an animal lover. He is mourning the loss of his cat Havoc. And later Norn asks Tuf how many crewmen he has, and Tuf lists his cats as crewmen. Neither of these things are part of the 76 version. In fact, it's actually kind of tough to determine Tuf 76's motivation. Tuf 76 is kind of psycho, really. One clue is that in 76 he says he doesn't like to be touched. In 85 this is changed to he doesn't like to be rudely seized and grasped, which is a big difference. But of course the big difference between Tuf 76 and 85 is the ending, which we'll get to. So Norn wants to buy a monster from Tuf for the fighting pits of Lauronica, and winning in the fighting pits will improve the standing and wealth of his house. These savage fighting pits are clearly an early version of the fighting pits of Marine. And an interesting change between Beast 76 and Beast 85 is the inclusion of empty honor. The seats of the arena in 85 are covered with the hides of those beasts who have previously lost, and their meat is given to charity. It is all supposed to honor the animals, and this is strikingly similar to Hizdar's argument for reopening the fighting pits in Marine, supposedly for honor's sake. And this is a reoccurring theme for our author. He is constantly questioning the logic and utility of honor. Honor is often portrayed as justification to do whatever you want, or to trick others into action. Kagan from The Hero was tricked into a lifetime of murder for honor's sake. The man-worm suffers having his limbs, eyes, and genitalia removed, and it's considered an honor. Preston overthrows Hisdar in a coup because he fears he's old and useless, but convinces himself it's honorable. Our author is clearly very cynical of the concept of honor. Anyway, Tuf very quickly gets his fill of the arena, and later takes Norn aboard the Ark and shows him various animals that Norn can use. Norn discovers that Tuf is essentially alone on the Ark, and considers seizing the ship from Tuf. But Dax alerts Tuf, who then tells Norn that the ship has defenses. In Beast 85, the defenses are detailed a bit more. Tuf has to input codes or else monsters will be released. Now, one fun thing that our author has included when Tuf is going over what animals are available for Norn is the presence of the roller ram. If you remember, back in the Plague Star, Rika Dawnstar releases 5 animals: a hooded Dracula that kills Jeffrey Lyon, a walking web that kills Kaj Nevis, hell kittens that kills Celise Wan, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex that she uses to try to kill Tuf. The 5th animal, the roller ram, doesn't really appear, and although the roller ram is mentioned in Beast 76, it's in Beast 85 that we find out what happens to it. Tuf tried to care for it, but the roller ram rolled itself into the walls, killing itself. In the discussion of monsters in the fighting pits, we also hear about lizard lions, who of course also live in the neck. Anyway, Norn decides on some telepathic cobalt cats, and Tuf tricks Norn into also taking an animal called a hopper to feed them. And so after Norn's purchase, Norn's house quickly goes from last to first among the 12 great houses in the pits. And as expected, the other houses then seek Tuf for their own purchases. The houses fall into a cycle of escalation that economists call the dollar auction, and is of course a metaphor for the escalation of nations' armament. The final house, Ameth, attempts to win by buying last, and tells Tuf to stop selling. Tuf weirdly agrees. Norn later calls Tuf back and tells him that the House of Norn is once again the poorest house. His cobalt cats aren't breeding, and Tuf tells him that the cobalt cats only breed with the blooming of a flower from the planet Vagabond. Vagabond is yet another world with an unusual orbit and long winters, so there's no way to have these flowers on Laronica and no way to have the cobalt cats breed. Even worse for Norn, the hoppers are eating all of Norn's crops, and the house is running out of money because it has to buy food from the poor farming world of Tamber. Tuf reveals that he essentially sabotaged all the ecosystems of the 12 houses, and that all of them will suffer ecological collapse, and in turn, economic collapse. And here's the big difference between Beast 76 and Beast 85. In Beast 76, the story ends with the implication that the 12 houses are likely to starve to death. Tuf 76 is a vindictive, vengeful man. But Beast 85 has Tuf explaining that starvation is not likely, but after hardship, a new predator-free ecosystem will emerge. Essentially, there will be no fighting pits, and Laronica will become like the poor farming world of Tamber. So Waif, I've been doing most of the talking here, but what are your thoughts on the story?
No offense to Mr. Martin, but I think his revision ruined the story.
Whoa, what? Ruined the story?
I mean, I understand why he did it. The idea that Tuf is the proper captain of the ship is essential for the parallel to Plato's Republic. He needed Tuf to be moral, which requires the houses to survive. And he needed Tuf to be a consistent character to the other stories as well.
So what's wrong with that?
Well, the fighting pits are a metaphor for war, yes? The houses, like nations, determine their economic standing through the suffering of gladiators. The animals are supposed to represent soldiers, needlessly dying and suffering for the benefit of rich people. And each of the houses, or nations, think they can better their position by enhancing their military.
Okay, yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
The message seems to be that militaristic pursuits simply lead to one's adversary doing the same, and things escalate and escalate. This is an arms race.
Well, yes, the most heavy-handed parallel is the arms race aspect.
And we know where the arms race ends. It ends in doom, nuclear or biological war, ultimate devastation. Having the houses survive in the end spoils that message. It makes it sound like the endgame of an arms race is a return to the simple agricultural life. It isn't. The end of an arms race is with the many-faced god. Interestingly, House Ameth, the last house to act, says, "We will not go around like this forever." He is correct. One house will be the last to act.
Well, Waif, I think you've summed things up pretty well. I don't have much else to say about A Beast for Norn. Next time we'll be talking about Tuf's 6th adventure, Call Him Moses. It's another story where our author has a questionable opinion of religion.
Questionable opinion of religion? I disagree. The religion of the many-faced god is portrayed perfectly.
If you say so, Waif. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everyone for Call Him Moses. The link for the story is below.